Hello, and welcome to PGS Reviews. I'm Rrr Mmmm of Positive Fandom. PGS Reviews is a show that features you, members of the Post-Geek Singularity. This show was created so PGS members could share interests that stir the imagination. I'd like to welcome the Cinemike to the show. Welcome, the Cinemike. How are you
Hi.
today?
I am looking forward to discuss these two categories.
That's
So,
right. Today we will be continuing our Oscar preview by looking at the nominees for Best Original Screenplay and Adapted Screenplay for 2022. So everybody watching, please like the video and subscribe to the channel and set alerts so you'll be notified every time the Burr Network posts a new show or stream. So let's get to it for Best Original Screenplay. Now, there are some serious contenders in this category, the Cinemike, and I have to say it's really going to be tough to really pick one that is the best. I want to start off with Kenneth Branagh for Belfast. And honestly, I had no idea that he had written this screenplay. I mean, I knew he was involved with this production heavily, and of course that it is somewhat autobiographical, but I have to say that he did a wonderful job of demonstrating, the struggle and the really adversity that he had to face, he and his family had to face, having to leave a home that they obviously cherished and loved. What were your thoughts of Kenneth Branagh's screenplay for Belfast?
so Belfast, which is also a Best Picture contender, and Kenneth Branagh is also nominated for directing. Kenneth Branagh doesn't, if you look at most of his films, he doesn't usually write the films that he directed. Usually, it's another screenwriter. Although this is his second screenplay nomination. His only other screenplay nomination was back in the 90s with the adapted for Hamlet. So, and I'm not sure if that is the last time that he wrote a film that he also directed. I'm not sure, but I know that he doesn't usually write the movies that he directed. And I thought Belfast, once again, just like what we've said when we discuss, the film in Best Picture in the past episode. It's great. It's a personal story. So of course Kenneth Branagh has to be the one to write it, and then um, regarding the screenplay itself, it doesn't have like a story, like a story like there's no like problem or whatsoever. It's a bit of a series of situations, or that that the kid and his parents and his grandparents, it's but while it's like a series of moments or a series of situations, there's an ongoing story where this family is contemplating if they should leave Belfast, which has been their home, throughout the entire life at that point, and move out. And I thought it was a great screenplay. You can feel the personal aspect. You can feel that it was Kenneth Branagh's a personal story, and I also like particularly the beginning, because we see them like before the riot, we see them having a peaceful life, and then the riot suddenly came and it changed the entire film. That moment, like, I mean, particularly, I mean, the characters, it changed the characters after the riot, and now the entire film we see them contemplating, you should leave or not, what is home, or whatever. And then at the end, it's a in the end, it had like an optimistic ending. And yeah, it's a great screenplay, not a traditional story, but it's a personal story for Kenneth Branagh, and I don't want to take any of that from him, because he is telling his story here, and I thought it was a well told story.
Yeah, I agree with you on this. And, something that stands out to me about this particular screenplay is the fact that, he technically speaking, it's something that happened when he was a child, at least in his particular case.
Yeah.
And I had to contemplate or try to figure out if he was actually telling the story from a child's point of view, which is also very different, as far as I'm concerned, from the other screenplays. Um, and so, kind of looking at it from that approach, how do you retell a story that you experience as a child so that it's believable as a child? He wanted it to be from that person's point of view, and I think he accomplished that, and I think that's why the story has that feel to it, where the as a child he is quite ignorant of what's going on and has to constantly ask questions as to why is this happening, where is daddy, are we always going to live in Belfast? These questions that any child would ask, because he can sense that there is a sense of uncertainty, unfortunately, happening where he lives. And, it would be any questions that any child would ask, but the focus on that really is, I think that for a historical event, a true life event that happened, he was able to capture that sense of, where he had to kind of figure out things, but truly doesn't understand the magnitude of what's going on as a child. And how it's going to have a profound effect over his life. So I think that that's what he might have been going for, and perhaps that's why the movie has that sense of, well, what exactly is going on here? What's the story? It's set in that tone because as a child, you don't have that understanding of what's happening until you grow up, and then you become an adult and you say, oh my goodness, what an experience I went through. Um, what a traumatic experience. At least that's how I view it. Um, so I think that for what it is as a historical event, which are always difficult to convey and put into a screenplay in an accurate way, or at least in a way that does it justice, I think he did a wonderful job. And once I looked at it from that point of view, I understood why that particular screenplay had that tone to it. Not exactly what an adult would look at, not anything you and I think would probably write as an adult, but he had to try and convey this experience that he had as a child, which was incredibly traumatic for him, but also something that trying to remember what his point of view was, and just the fact that he may not have fully understood what was going on at the time. And everybody was very kind to him. There were a lot of people who were very kind. He had that loving family that were constantly trying to reassure him that everything was going to be okay. And I think that was also something that stood out in the film as well. So, I think that his writing and conveying that, he did a pretty good job with that. The next film that I'd like to look at is Don't Look Up, which has quite a few credits to it. Adam McKay, story by Adam McKay and David Sirota. What did you think of this screenplay for Don't Look Up?
So yeah, Don't Look Up, which is the latest film from Adam McKay and David Sirota. I believe he's a journalist. He's credited as one of the um, people who conceived the story. So Adam McKay, in terms of his screenplay history at the Oscars, he has won before for The Big Short, but that is adapted. This is like his second original because the first one is Vice. Then now Don't Look Up. With Don't Look Up, it's a satire. It's basically a satire about where we are right now as in our society. And I thought, and satires are always tricky to write because you know you have to address whatever issue you want to address. And since it's a satire, it has to be both comedic and also speaks the truth. So you have to balance that. While the reception of Don't Look Up has been mixed, there are some who thought that they were too on point with their message, which is, I think, it's a valid view about the film, and it can be. But at the same time, it's also an entertaining comedic film. And I thought, for me, at least for me, I thought they balanced the satire, talking about, and in this case, it's a climate change allegory. Although in the film they use the meteor as the stand-in for climate change. And yeah, I thought Adam McKay was able to tell this satire about how the government, how the people respond to a worldwide, to a to a global threatening crisis. And it's, unfortunately, I think, what he presented here about how we handle all these things, there is a lot of truth in it. And even with, example, with what, in light of what is happening recently right now in our world, and in um yeah, so yeah, there's a lot really that has to be done in order to successfully pull off this kind of film. And yeah, at the end for me, I thought Adam McKay was able to write a very, very solid satire about the world where we are right now. And with the jokes, they are most of the jokes in the film are really, really funny, and you'll laugh at some of the moments. Although I guess there's, because Adam McKay is also known for asking their actors to improv. So I guess there's like 20% of the dialogues in the film are improv from the actors. But still, still from a screenplay standpoint, I thought it was well presented. And talking about the ending, spoiler alert, it was a bleak ending for sure. But yeah, I think he is just relaying what he thinks where we are right now, or what he observed about where we are right now in this world, and use the genre of satire to convey that. And as I say, it's difficult to pull off. While it's not like in a Doctor Strange love level, but I guess it's relevant. So yeah, it's a well deserved nomination for me, if you ask me, for original screenplay. And yeah, I it's yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think that it is a well-deserved nomination, and it certainly was made. It does have a message. It was, it has a like a political message, so to speak. And obviously, I guess if right from the beginning of the story that it does have this political message by the title, "Don't Look Up," kind of telling you to kind of ignore things that are going on. And it doesn't just tackle, I guess, politics, but it tackles a lot of different areas that might be criticized by our modern culture today, and people's priorities and things of that nature. So I think it does do a good job of looking at it, but it also does look at the funny parts of some of this and the not so funny parts. And I think it was organized very well. I think that it was so balanced, and it made sense if you look at it and try to understand what's going on. And I think, maybe 20 years from now, when we're not using perhaps these ways to communicate anymore, or maybe even 30 years from now, things have changed and people look back at this time. This would be one of the films I would say you have to check out. Perhaps it's a more exaggerated version of what's been going on in our society, but perhaps not for some. I think that it really does touch on that, and I think that McKay and David Sirota did a fantastic job of conveying that in this film. There's absolutely no way to go or other way to interpret this film. It's straightforward, and they're very deliberate comments and let's say characters that shape the world that this story is created in. It's perhaps an imitation of the current Earth that we live on. But, let's say hypothetically, if this happened, we certainly don't want an asteroid heading our way, but hypothetically, what would happen if it did? And this is kind of a very interesting way to interpret when things happen and there's an emergency, and responses, and how people are affected by that. And so, I think they did a great job with it, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that film. I'm going to stay away from it for a while and then rewatch it so I can kind of forget some of the things that happen in it, because I don't want to have to remember every single detail. So I'm going to stay away from it. And in a few months, I'm going to revisit it again just so I can enjoy it all over again. I think the screenplay was, just really very playful. And, even though the message was heavy, I thought that they kind of did put in some light twists to it that, we can all relate to. So I certainly, want to congratulate them for doing what I consider is a wonderful screenplay as well. So that's also very interesting to look at. And so let's look at the next screenplay. King Richard, and the screenplay is by Zac Bailey. And, once again, this is another screenplay of a particular event that is historical in nature. And, I always say sometimes it's very difficult to go ahead and, kind of relate these historical events in a way that, you and I would think would be, would honor what we're expecting to see, or at least what we're hoping to see. So I did want to know what is your opinion of the screenplay for King Richard by Zac Bailey?
Yeah, with King Richard, so Zac Bailey wrote the film, and the impressive thing is that I check his credits on IMDb, and this is his first credit, King Richard, actually, and and now he's a first-time Oscar nominee, for this movie. I mean, for sure, he has written a lot of screenplays before, but this is the first one that he got a credit, on screen. And I read that he is also the writer of the Third Creed film, which is another sports film. I thought, with King Richard, it could have been this traditional sports biopic, like, oh, we see, uh, like, like a story structure that they could have done is that oh, when Serena and Venus was like 5 years old, their father discovered that they can play tennis. So we see them train, and then it was difficult at first, and then they train, somebody discovered them, blah blah blah, and then they're now at the world stage, and then at the end they won, and then at the end, before the credits, there is this pictures of present day Venus and Serena, and some written text, typical biopic stuff. But while there was that at the end, at the credits, there was the footage and pictures of Venus and Serena throughout the years until the present day, and also some text while Beyonce's song is playing. But I thought it deviates itself from that formula, because what really struck me about King Richard is the ending. It didn't end with them winning. It's just Richard saying that it's okay that you lost. We will just train more, work harder, and it's still a great ending, even though it didn't end with them winning, because we know now that they are one of the best tennis players, not just right now, but of all time. We know who they are now. So it really didn't feel necessary, at the very least, that the movie ends with them winning that match. And it also didn't start with them as this like 5-year-old, 4-year-old. When they discovered tennis, like they saw a racket and they tried it, what it is, and they tried playing. It didn't start, but it's already started. That we already see that Richard is training the two sisters, and then we see their family life. We see what kind of household they live in. They just set up that Venus and Serena are already good tennis players, and their father trains them in the day, and then at night he works in a graveyard shift. But even when he's working, we see that he's still thinking about their tennis career. We see that he is planning it, and we see that he makes this all these calls to different coaches to hopefully train them. And yeah, it's it. I mean, there's really nothing wrong about formulas, when it comes to biopics, because that is their story. But they found a way to make it different, and it didn't rely much on that formula 100%, and it worked. And and also at the end, we were able to empathize with particularly with Richard Williams, where we see his point of view, what he feels about this. And it's a well told story of a story that we think that we might know, but we actually don't. And as I said, the ending really struck me, because it wasn't a traditional ending of a biopic. And which is okay in this case, which is okay since we know that Venus and Serena are now the biggest tennis players in the world, and probably of all time. So yeah, it's just a great film also in itself.
Yeah, you make an excellent point, the Cinemike, about the idea of what they chose to include in this biopic. And I agree with you 100%. And we had discussed, you and I've discussed before about when it's a famous individual like Venus and Serena, and in this case, their parents, Oracene and Richard, like what do they include in the story? And I guess there'll be several biopics about Venus and Serena, over the next 20 years going forward, whether, it involves Venus and Serena's involvement or not. People are going to still be talking about them and making documentaries and everything. And, I think that this one does stand out in several ways, because it doesn't just focus on their training as tennis players, but on their relationships with one another and with their father and mother. And even their parents' relationship is explored. And so that also was incredibly important, versus focusing on how many wins they have, how many high fives we're going to give each other. There's so much more, and so much more weight to this story that needed to be told, so that everyone could understand, the situation for their family, and make it so that it was portrayed in the right way for the Williams family, since they had involvement in this. And so, there was a lot to live up to when it comes to writing a screenplay, especially where the family is involved. The persons who are in the screenplay or about the screenplay are still alive. And so, that also has another element that makes it challenging. But they did a wonderful job. And I agree with you. I like that they didn't necessarily focus on the typical sort of stuff that we might have seen in a typical biopic. And I think that's what makes the screenplay so special, too. So, yeah, it is a wonderful screenplay, and really a treat that we got a chance to have a movie about them at this point in their lives. So it certainly is another contender going forward as well. The next movie and screenplay that we're going to be looking at is the one for Licorice Pizza. And Licorice Pizza, the person who wrote the screenplay for Licorice Pizza is Paul Thomas Anderson. What did you think about the screenplay for Licorice Pizza?
So I finally got the chance to watch Licorice Pizza, and I love the film. And Paul Thomas Anderson, this is his fourth screenplay nomination. He previously got nominated for Boogie Nights, Magnolia, and Inherent Vice. Inherent Vice is adapted. And I think, if you look at Paul Thomas Anderson's films, one of the biggest strength is his writing, especially with the way he writes the characters. They're like, arguably every single Paul Thomas Anderson films have great characters, not just the main character, but probably the whole ensemble. And and um and I'm going to read what I when I log in my letterbox after watching the film. Like, I'm going to read some parts of what I wrote. I said, I don't know how to describe Licorice Pizza except that it's a slice of life film. There's no overarching story that holds everything together or a problem that they're trying to solve. We just see these two characters making their way in 1973 San Fernando Valley. Gary's an ambitious man doing all these kinds of business while Alana is trying to figure out what she wants in her life. It's an easy breezy hangout film that just puts a smile on your face, and it's all about characters. From time to time they would meet some showbiz figures who would do some fun eccentric stuff. Paul Thomas Henderson managed to capture the magic of daily life, even if the smallest things, whether it's driving a truck or listening to a musical in a plane. And he also managed to make us care about the characters. So yeah, that is what I wrote because I thought it's a great screenplay because of that. It's a well-written characters starting from the very first scene where Gary was falling in line at the yearbook photo shoot. Then he saw Alana. He flirted with her. Starting with that very scene, you already know these characters, and you already know the tone and what story you're about to see. From the very first scene, it's all already set up. The main characters were already set up, even in this 4 or 5 minute long conversation that they have while they were in line. And i and and throughout like as I said, it doesn't have a story to follow. We just see them doing these things while in the valley in 1973, and then from time to time they would meet, like example with Sean Penn's character, who is basically based on William Holden, or they would meet Bradley Cooper's character John Peters, who is by that time the partner of Barbara Streisand. And there's a lot of showbiz, because Gary himself is also an actor who has starred in a movie with an actress who is basically based on Lucille Ball. So it's a great film, great screenplay, and whenever I watch a film, the number one, the most important thing for me is the characters, is that I would care about these characters, that I would love these characters. And I really did love these two main characters because they are essentially the focus, and the others are just basically cameos, with Sean Penn and Bradley Cooper. The others, they're basically just cameos. um so yeah, I it's a well deserved nomination for sure. Paul Thomas Anderson once again makes another film where he wrote all these great characters that we would care as an audience, and he really successfully did that, especially with these two main characters that really, they are also played by first time actors, with Cooper Hoffman and Alana Haim. They're not really experienced actors. So even, and I'm sure like I know he wrote the Alana Kane character with Alana Haim in mind, so he knows her strength already when he wrote writing the lines. And so yeah, I was just really impressed with this film and its screenplay, and very very well deserved nomination.
I agree with you 100% on your comments. You make so many good points. I think that coming of age movies are absolutely wonderful. And, clearly this is a coming of age story. As you said, growing up in California and all the experiences you have as a young adult, and all those wonderful things and embarrassing things that happen to you. And to capture that moment is really something that, you never forget those moments in your life. And to capture it in a film or in a screenplay, it's just absolutely magical. I love that idea, and I think we need to see more of these types of films coming forward. I find them to be, while they have positive and negative moments, I find them to be quite cathartic in a sense, by watching these experiences that other people have. We're not alone. We all go through these different things as we grow up, and isn't it wonderful to be able to kind of celebrate it in a film version of being able to see that. And I think that type of depiction is just something that we need to see more of. And I think it will definitely benefit all of us to share our experiences this way. So I think, I have to absolutely applaud him for doing this screenplay and doing it in such a way that is really enjoyable and truly is, in my opinion, I agree with you 100%. One of the best films of the year, if not the best one. Okay, so the next film that we are going to be looking at for Best Original Screenplay is The Worst Person in the World. The screenplay was written by Eskil Vogt and Joachim Trier. What were your thoughts of this particular screenplay?
Yeah, The Worst Person in the World. I have also seen this film. It's from Norway. It's also the Norway's entry for the Best International Feature Film, which ended up getting nominated. So, and I love The Worst Person in the World. It's a great film, and I really highly recommend it. The film, I don't know how. Like, I guess the best description of the worst person in the world is it's basically like a romance film for people who don't like romance films, because it's not like, well, it's a romance film. We see the main character Julie, meeting this guy, later on meeting another guy, and it's a romantic film for sure, but it's really not really also romantic at the same time, because it's more like a character driven. And I'm going to read again what I wrote about The Worst Person in the World after watching it. When I log in my diary, I said, so The Worst Person in the World, it's about a person who's continuously navigating her life as she meets people. It's a rom-com, and yet it doesn't feel like one, but you're invested in Julie's romantic life. In the end, it doesn't give you a lovey-dovey feel, but instead it's more like a retrospective look at life, and it makes you realize that sometimes you will meet a person that will have a big impact on your life. Sometimes the person makes you happy and has an impact on you will be someone that you will eventually start communicating with. And this is what makes a film special. It makes you ponder a lot of things, whether it's enjoying your life, or life is a ticking bomb, or life is limitless. And the title might make you think that Julie's the worst person in the world, but it's really not. She's just a human. She might not have figured out what she wanted, but that doesn't mean that she is the worst person in the world. And with Julie, like they set up at the first 10 minutes, that Julie is an indecisive person who changes careers. And I think at the beginning she was studying. I forgot if it's psychology or med school, or one of those two. And then she decided to go into photography when she realized that, wait, this is what I actually want, photography. So yeah, she keeps on changing careers, and she keeps on changing careers. And then she would meet a guy she would eventually fall in love with. Then later on, when their relationship falters, is starting to falter, she met another guy who she really had an instant chemistry with. And then she would realize that this guy that she met actually already with someone else. There's a lot of going on, and I thought it's a great character driven piece about this person who really hasn't figured out her life, she's also not sure about also who she loves, especially with these two guys. you know it's a great, she's not a perfect person. Like, she's probably the type of person that if you will meet in real life, you'll be like, huh, but but what I love this is that it's a depth look at how life can be complicated. Like, with especially with Julie, like, as I said, she's indecisive, and she's juggling if which of these two guys who she really loves. And it shows that life is complicated. And sometimes you won't really figure out your life even when you're at your 30s. And then and sometimes you would meet different people in your life. Some of that relationship will last for a long time, some will not. and it's, you know, it's basically about life. And at the end, the film reminds you that life can be limitless, but also enjoy your life, because it can be a ticking bomb. And you know, especially with what happened with one particular character, you know, I won't spoil what I mean by that. And it's a very fulfilling, profound film for me, you know, after watching it, which is why I ended up really loving the film. You know, it's just, yeah, it's a great film about life and love and all that stuff. And yeah, and the title might be called the worst person in the world, but you know, it's, I guess that's, it's the irony. And yeah, I really like this film a lot, and I love that it gotten a screenplay nomination, because normally foreign films, international films, don't usually get nominated a lot in this category. And I think this is a very inspired nomination, because it's really one of the, for me, one of the best films of 2021. It's certainly one of the most one of the best written films as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think that one thing that stands out to me about this film is that with infinite choices comes infinite possibilities. And that is something that this character in the story is presented with. And I think that, let's just say, maybe not even every woman, but every person, or let's say person who's single or young adult or however you want to call it, maybe it doesn't even have to be young adult anymore. Now we're presented with, you know, the sky's the limit. You know, you can go on and meet somebody in 5 minutes, or, you know, the world's, you know, attitudes. And there's been sort of like a shift in ideas where, you know, there's that line that we saw where she's like, well, we're not cheating, you know, and the idea of people accepting, you know, open relationships, you know, a somewhat more modern version of, you know, the sexual revolution. This is as open as it can get. You know, I can pick up somebody right in front of you and we're fine with it. You know, I think that it's a realistic view of what's actually happening today in a lot of encounters with people, but no one wants to really talk about that sort of stuff. You know, I think that that focus on this realism and the way that life actually is for, you know, anyone, and it's true that the story is about a woman, but um, this could be any character that they're focusing on. Just being able to do what you like when you want to do it. You do what you want when you want, and you don't necessarily have to answer to anybody because she doesn't. That's maybe perhaps the reality of our modern world, and to be able to capture it so that it makes sense in a context. I think a lot of people, you know, can't wrap their head around a lot of these circumstances. The film was nominated for the Palme d'Or and it lost it to Tane, but it certainly, you know, absolutely deserved the nomination. I'm pretty sure it was nominated or contended for the Palme d'Or at Cannes. So there's definitely something about this film that created a sense of just realism at a time when we're not really getting that realism in our day-to-day lives right now. You know, people are very guarded and they're staying home and they're wearing
Yeah.
masks and can't have these sort of intimate encounters like we'd like to. But if given the choice, there are a lot of people who are living their lives like this today. And for some persons might argue that this is the reason why, you know, family life, the family unit is gone. Or, you know, you mentioned the indecisiveness of the character. The character, I think, is indecisive because she has just so many options, and she's going to live all those options. She's going to take them all, take the bull by the horns, and enjoy every single moment of everything that she can get, and enjoy it for what it is. And I think it's a refreshing, you know, kind of like very free sense of a film that appeals to, you know, not all but many people who kind of like that idea of being free and not having to necessarily stick with one thing. But for other people, they can kind of look at this film and say, you know, it's kind of sad that she's like this. I feel sorry for her, you know. But I assure you, I think that it's very interesting because I feel like this is the reality for so many people right now. And, you know, I think that's why it spoke to Cannes. That's why it was nominated for this, because it's a sense of realism for a lot of single people and maybe even married people and people who are not married but engaged or have boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever your situation is. This may be their reality now, the reality of what it's like to live in our modern world, so, and have relationships like this. So I absolutely loved this screenplay, and I am so excited that it was nominated in this category. It certainly deserves some recognition for extending itself into areas that may be considered thorny topics for some. People don't like to think about married people sleeping with other married people or with single people, or not everybody likes to talk about that, but they took it head on. And I think that that's very important because it is a reality of what's going on right now. Um,
Yeah.
that's how I feel about that. I loved it. I thought that it was refreshing to see life this way, and perhaps not as extreme as Titane. I think that Titane was a supernatural version of of this film, more of a supernatural take on it. But I think that this film, just in realism alone, perhaps represents a certain portion of the population that's ignored, and seeing it in as a woman telling this tale is just absolutely remarkable. Congratulations to the screenwriter, playwriter, for doing something that's so revealing and absolutely just, as far as I'm concerned, such a great release of the reality of life today. So that's how I feel about that one. And so, shall we go ahead and take a look at the best adapted screenplay category?
Yes.
Would you like to start off with
Um,
introducing? Yes.
yeah, sure, sure. So the first nominee is Coda, which is written by Sean Hayder. She also directed the film, and it is based on a 2014 French film called La Famille Belier, if I'm saying it right. I think out of all the adapted screenplay nominees, this is the film that doesn't feel like adapted. Like it felt like an original, like it did based on it, but it is like an American remake of a French film, and which is why it didn't feel like an adapted, but it isn't adapted. It just didn't feel like it. But then, as I said, Coda is about this family, but only one of them is hearing. The rest are deaf, and throughout their life, their daughter, played by Emilia Jones, she is basically their gate to the world. She is their interpreter, but then she's now like on her senior high in high school, and she has to go to college, and she wants to follow her dreams of becoming a singer, but then her family doesn't necessarily want that or understand that, because she has been their interpreter for ever since she was probably a kid, and now she has to go away, and also she's a singer, and her family doesn't necessarily understand that, and they were not sure if she is really a good singer, so they just have to rely on what they all say about her singing talent, so they don't understand that. But it's a heartwarming film, and I thought it's a great screenplay that it is a storytelling. It's traditional, but I think what ended up standing out is his heart. It's a heartwarming film. You also care about these characters a lot, especially this family, every single family members. Whether it's Marley Matlин's character, Troy Kotcher's character, and even the music coach or mentor, played by Eugenio Derbez. Even him, he was also a great character as well. So yeah, it's a well-deserved nomination for sure. It's a great, well-written. We're all, once again, as you said, the most important thing for me is that the characters, like, not like, I don't need to love them. I just need to like these characters and understand them. And yeah, I love the family. I love this family. I love their dynamic, and I am very happy that they are receiving all this recognition, not just the screenplay, but it's also Best Picture contender in everything that it has gotten so far. So yeah.
I agree with you. I think that something that I was trying to wrap my head around about Coda was what point of view is this screenplay told from? And, I thought to myself, like, is it told from the daughter's point of view? Is it told from the rest of the family's point of view? And I think that, and I could be wrong on this, it feels like it's told from the singing teacher's point of view, because I feel like the way that it's being told, we are kind of like on the outside looking into this family, and to do it this way is very interesting because it's almost like they're letting us into their private lives, but we can't fully understand all of their desires. In other words, the parents, we're observing things that the parents are doing, and we're observing things that the daughter is doing. But it's not until she meets that singing teacher that she starts to see what's inside of her. And I kind of think that he's the character that the screenplay really brings out the most, because he's the one that helps her get to a point where she knows that she has to kind of leave her family and pursue her dreams. So for me, I think it's interesting that, they kind of show the importance of, the performing arts in a family that, may not necessarily enjoy every element of the performing arts. They do know what it is. They know it exists, even if they can't experience the full hearing spectrum of it. But, they do have feelings, and they do certainly have dreams that I'm sure that the parents both had, but perhaps they weren't in a position to have a teacher like that who might have helped them to get to where they wanted to go, which is something else that I think is also very interesting. And so for me, the focus was that professor or that teacher in high school who got her to kind of find her voice. You remember, as he was showing her how to sing, and he was saying, well, you're not using your diaphragm, or you're not, you're not using your full potential in your lungs. And I almost kind of interpreted that as, well, things are quiet at home, and maybe she stays quiet. Maybe she doesn't make a lot of noise, for a number of reasons, because no one makes any noise. Perhaps there isn't any noise at the house. And so there's no reason for her to make noise, or she always stays quiet because, the rest of the family may be quiet, and therefore she has resigned herself to also be quiet as well. So, like, there are so many things that I had to think about in that regard. And I think they did a good job. If anything, this film has really taught me just the importance of the performing arts, regardless of, the family situation, regardless of the focus of what your family may be doing. It is needed. And here, we saw that in this character, written by, I guess it's Sean Heder. Is it Sean?
Yeah,
Sean,
I believe
yeah,
so.
Heder. I think that this was a wonderful screenplay, and I think getting that point across was so important, especially in this context. Can you please introduce the next film that has been nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay?
So yeah, next is Drive My Car, written by Ryusuke Hamaguchi and Takamasa Oe. It is based on a short story by Haruki Murakami. But, it's part of his short story collection book called it's part of his 2014 book, short story collection book called Men Without Women. So, I mentioned in a previous episode, this is my favorite film of 2021. And, with, so this is a 3-hour film. So, of course, so obviously, the screenplay of this is hundreds of pages for sure. And what I really love about Drive My Car is that, you, and I hear a lot of people like complaining and saying like, why are some movies today long? Like not just like the Marvel movies like Endgame, which is like 3 hours long. Like the upcoming The Batman with Matt Reeves is 3 hours long, and there's also films like No Time to Die or House of Gucci, which is it's a bit closer to 3 hour running time. And I hear some people like, why are movies long today? Why there a lot of movies are getting long? I said, I don't think there's really nothing wrong about long movies as long as they earned it. And I thought Drive My Car earned that 3 hour running time because The first 40 minutes, which it's basically a setup of who this main character is, and what we see his relationship with his wife first, and what he discovered about his wife, and then unfortunately she suddenly passed away, and of course he is grieving because of it. And then jump forward to, I believe, 2 years later, and after the opening credits, 40 minutes into the film, and we see that that he got invited as the director of a multilingual production of Uncle Vanya in Hiroshima, and we see that he is still grieving, and and then added up to that, he found out one of the actors who auditioned and he also cast in the play is basically his his late wife's lover. So it adds it to the drama. And then of course he also formed this friendship with his driver, who is also has her own problem that she's also dealing with. And as I said, it earned every single minute. There's character development. We see this little moments. We see these conversations between the main character and his driver, and we see them dealing with grief and regret and guilt, and dealing with this conscience that they have, that they've been having for years. And then we see them deal with it, and at the same time, all these drama and problems in the production of the play. And and then and also what I also like is that, like, yeah, there's a lot of Uncle Vanya references, obviously, since that's the play that they were doing, and also that is the play that the main character recites with the tape of with his wife. So there's a lot of Uncle Vanya in here, but it wasn't just a passing reference. It's actually integrated. The story of Uncle Vanya is integrated a bit in the story, and yeah, it's just a well written screenplay. And with I mean, it's based on a story by Haruki Murakami, who is one of the best selling authors worldwide. And it's not always an easy feat to adapt a story from an author like Haruki Murakami. There's only like a few attempts. Like, I think, like, there's another film, it's in Korea, called Burning, starring Steven Yeun. It's a Korean film. That one is also an adaptation of a Murakami story, and that's also a great film. So yeah, I just love this film so much. As I say, it's my favorite of 2021. It's a great story that is 3 hours long, and it might be slow for some, but it is worth watching. And yeah, it just deals with so many themes that were really well explored and profound as well. Same with the worst person. This is also a profound film, and at the end you leave satisfied. You feel like your soul has uplifted, that you now see the world probably differently at the end. So yeah, and this is, as Martin Scorsese say, this is cinema.
Yes, those are excellent points. I think Hamaguchi and Oe managed to capture the solitude and the feeling of being alone after such a loss. And you mentioned that the husband in the story, kind of admits that he and this man love the same woman, and how it just doesn't matter to him. Like, it's completely unimportant that she was in love with someone else too. Like, this is the reality of life. It's not always sort of a cut and dry situation, and trying to explain that to someone is very difficult, because, as I said before, a lot of times people kind of like to look at situations and say, well, this is a married couple and she's in love with some other man at the same time, like, what's going on here? And it's like, life isn't always, just a custom fit package where everybody is, compartmentalized. It just isn't real. And so, he's still suffering after so many years of having lost his wife. And I think that he may still continue to still feel the pain from this, but I'm glad that they showed that he's still in a sense of mourning, or has this sense of loss, and how important it is to him. But then I also wonder to myself, for example, different cultures value individuals who have passed differently. And, I had to ask myself this question of, is this, depending upon what culture you're in, how do you value individuals who have passed on? I know it can be different the way you value ancestors. It can be different the way you see people who are elderly. And so I think that, if we saw anything in this, was just how profound his love was for his wife. And, this was something that even after she's gone, it had such an effect over him. It is kind of a very interesting thing also to look at from the sense of what are cultural norms from country to country. And, if you know nothing about this country, now you've learned quite a lot about it, and how people may respond to different situations. And I love that they did that. I love that they kind of opened the door for us to see things, and didn't kind of make it cookie cutter into a formula that, let's say, movie productions would always do. That wouldn't have done the story justice, would it? It would have kind of made it, seem too quick and fast. And, we have a perfect explanation for everything. Well, guess what? Life isn't like that. There are no perfect explanations for everything all the time. And so, the process of trying to figure out where you are from day to day is a reality for a lot of people. And I think that journey that you get to take along with these characters is reflected in this screenplay. So, definitely, as you said, it is wonderful story, wonderfully done. And, it stemming from that screenplay, I'm just so glad that they did something so beautiful and made a film that truly deserves the recognition it's been getting. Can you please introduce the next nominee for Best Adapted Screenplay?
Yeah, so the next is Dune, which is written by John Space, Denis Villeneuve, and Eric Roth, based on the, probably one of the most iconic science fiction novels of all time, by Frank Herbert, published in 1965. And, with Dune, it has been adapted before on the big screen, from David Lynch. And although, with the David Lynch film, they adapted the whole novel. This one, they only adapted the first half of the novel. And, these three writers, one of them is Eric Roth, who has won before for Forrest Gump, and of course Denis Villeneuve is who also directed this film. Um, with Dune, it's a very challenging material to adapt because it's a dense novel with a lot of world building, and there's a lot of character development, and there's a lot these lore and mythos that they have to introduce. And it's a challenging, even though if it's only a first half of the novel, there's still a lot of challenge and a lot that they have to introduce in order for us, the audience, to fully understand Arrakis, and what is the spice, like what is that, or like who is the Atreides family, like why is the Harkonnen family, like why are they like that. There's a lot of world building here, and for some they might not be satisfied enough for on the world building that they did, because it's a dense novel, and I don't think there is really like the perfect way to adapt this, unless I guess they have to make this like a 4-hour film. But of course they cannot do that. They can't do a 4-hour film of this. It's like it's rare nowadays for films to be released, with 4-hour running time, unlike like in the past. So they can only like tell the story. I believe there's like 2.5 hours, and I thought they were able to do that. I thought they were able to do a world building of this entire universe. Not just Arrakis, but this, like gave us an idea about the Atreides and the Harkonnens and yeah. So and they gave us like what is Paul Atreides, like who is he, like why, like what is his role, like like yeah, with Paul Atreides and Lady Jessica, like they were able to introduce a lot of these themes and concepts and lore. I thought they explained it in enough for us to understand it, not even as the general audience. And there are a lot of people will be watching this film, they have not read the novel, so you really need to do a lot of world building to make them understand this entire world and these characters and what are they doing and why is, like what is spice and all that. And yeah, I just thought that they did a great job on doing all this world building. And and uh and and even though it's only the first half of the novel, it still felt a complete story for me. I still felt that they were able to tell a complete story, a complete journey, while at the same time at the end, with the way they ended, it's very obvious that there is another chapter of this. And now thankfully they have officially given a green light to the sequel, which will start shooting this year, later this year. And I believe they will shoot it in like July, so it's coming for sure. And yeah, with the challenge that they have on adapting this, and they also know that they can't screw this up because I mean, we know what how everyone responded to the David Lynch version. So, and I thought they did really a great job on world building. It may not be enough, especially those who love the novel, it might not be enough for them. But I think, from the point of view of a general audience, they really did a lot of this world building. And I think the box office says it. And I don't know what numbers it had when it also streamed on HBO Max, but just the box office alone and the audience ratings and all that, I think that tells me that the general audience was able to understand the film. And the writers successfully able to do all the world building enough to make us, the audience, invested in this world.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Spates, Villeneuve, and Roth certainly had a task ahead of them that seems unsurmountable. I mean, the idea of having to adapt those books, which have such a massive amount of information, just seems so impossible. But they did do it. And of course, there's always going to be things that they couldn't include.
Yeah.
Sadly, this is not like the Lord of the Rings series where they had, 5-hour extended versions of the film
Yeah.
for each one. And sadly, we're not going to get that. But it would be great if they had something like that. I'm sure people would watch it. We can't get enough of Dune. I mean, it is one of those IPs that I would watch a super long extended cut of this first part of the novel, no matter what, and just enjoy and savor every single minute that I could get of it. But we were lucky to get anything at all, and they chose to focus on very specific things. And I think for me, while they did make a concerted effort to do a fantastic screenplay, this film is always for me going to be about the cinematography. That also was like one of those tasks that if you could pull that off, you had a great chance of having this film be a success, which I feel it was. But I think that the screenplay, they could have actually done a lot of things they wanted to do differently. And the movie
Yeah.
starts off where we get the point of view of I can't remember the girl's name,
um,
Zendaya's character.
yeah. Why
And
am I
so
black? I'm also blanking on her name at the moment.
yeah, I mean, I think it's great that we get her point of view. And, perhaps it's a new point of view that we haven't seen before from the Fremen. And I think that that is an enlightening way to tell a story that's been told quite a few times and a lot of people are very familiar with. But having that refreshing take on it, where she starts off talking about how important her planet is, and obviously it's one of the most important planets in this galaxy because of what it possesses, the riches that it possesses, which is the spice. So um, I think we do get a sense of that. And something that the screenplay also does is that while everybody gets relocated to the spice planet, it almost feels like it becomes the center of the universe, and that's something that I think is perhaps not truly the case, but I'm glad that I get that sense from the screenplay, as if this is the most important place in the galaxy. And I think that having that focus in the screenplay is so important, and that there are so many more secrets to discover in this world. And the upcoming films are going to show us all those secrets. But having that focus of what have we yet to discover about this place that has the spice and probably so much more is very exciting. And they did such a wonderful job with this film. The Cinemike, what is the next film that was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay?
Okay, the next is The Lost Daughter, written by Maggie Gyllenhaal, which is based on the novel by Elena Ferrante, which was published in 2006. And Maggie Gyllenhaal also directed this film. I thought The Lost Daughter, it's also a well-written film, and the like the making of this film has an interesting backstory. Like, I think according to Maggie Gyllenhaal, like, so when she read the novel, she loved it. She was, yeah, she loved the novel, and she felt it was profound and all that stuff. So when she tried to get the rights, and Elena Ferrante, for those who are not familiar, she is anonymous. It's actually a pseudonym for whoever she is. We still don't know who is Elena Ferrante until now. She keeps her, she's just using this name. Who knows? Maybe, she's not even a she. Maybe, and so who knows who is Elena Ferrante is? But but um, but yeah. So Maggie Gyllenhaal, tried to get the rights, and she was able to email with Elena Ferrante, and then Elena Ferrante said, like, okay, I will give you the rights, but I want you to direct it as long as you direct it. So Maggie was like, okay, I guess I guess I'll direct it. And since Elena Ferrante basically gave her, she basically made her the custodian of a film version of her work. And I thought, yeah, she did a great job of telling the story of a woman, while she was on a holidays on a Greek island. I believe it's in Greece, um, on a Greek island. And then when she sees this mother and daughter with Dakota Johnson, and then she started, you know, contemplating and, looking back when she was a younger mother and feel this guilt that she has, and yeah, and I thought I thought with the script from the screenplay standpoint, it really made us look at this person in three-dimensional and understand her, like yes, back when she was younger, she might have, she did some things like planning to abandon them. And of course, it's not a good thing, obviously, to consider abandoning your children. But then, she made us understand, or empathize a bit, like why she would think of that, even though it's not right. And it's one of those things where, together with the screenplay and the performances, I thought they really, really conveyed this story very, very well. And I'm sure Elena Ferrante, wherever she is sitting right now, maybe in Italy, since I believe she's Italian, because we don't know who she is. I believe, I'm pretty sure she is happy with this adaptation. Because for me, I mean, I haven't read the novel, but I really felt like they were really able to tell this story very well, and this story of guilt, and about motherhood. or even parenthood in general, that they probably, parents don't usually like to face or embarrassed to tell about. But it's, yeah, it's just a great film as well from Maggie Gyllenhaal. And also it's impressive with Maggie Gyllenhaal because we know her as an actress, and she has previously been nominated in supporting actress for Crazy Hearts. And we've known her for years as an actress, and then she gave us this directorial debut from her. And she is an author, both director and writer, and yeah, tell this film. And I thought she really nailed it. She really aced it with this, her first time work as a director and a screenwriter.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on all of those points. I think the biggest celebration here is Maggie Gyllenhaal and her accomplishments as a writer, as director, as sorry, screenplay writer, as director of adapted screenplay of this story. Clearly she knows what she's doing, and I hope to see many more films like this from Maggie Gyllenhaal. In fact, I hope that she continues for the rest of her life making films like this. I haven't seen anything, just be so beautiful. And of course, I had no idea that she had this talent as well. She is a talented actress, as you mentioned before. And my favorite film of hers is called Cherry Baby. But she's made so many stellar films in her career. For me, when I see this story, and while there is a lot of controversial parts of the story, the thing that stands out for me is that not every person can be a parent. And so this is something that is just a fact of life, and not everybody is raising their own children.
Yeah,
We know this
I
to be
also agree
true
with that. Yeah,
worldwide. It's a worldwide issue. Not everybody can raise their own children. Not everybody, people do become parents, but not everybody can take on that task for whatever reason, whether, who knows what the circumstances are in each case, but it's just something that is the reality of life. And that is kind of a thorny issue to deal with.
yeah,
People don't want to talk about that, but, we've seen this happen time and time again. And, like, what do you do with that as a individual? And like, for example, with the Olivia Colman character dealing with the decisions that she's made in her life, where does that go? Where does all of that stuff go when you're kind of looking back at your life and how things have happened? So I think that that's very important to note, and I think that comes across in the screenplay very, very clearly. Observing other people with their families, and all sorts of things are going through her mind when you see something like this. You can't but help that, and I think that shows quite a bit of empathy on the part of the, let's say, the original author of the book, as well as Gyllenhaal being able to convey that in the screenplay. Whether her decisions were right or wrong, it still doesn't devoid the person from having feelings and concerns, and wondering about what the rest of their life is going to be like, and looking back at things. So I thought that was a very touching way that Gyllenhaal did it. She clearly has a talent for telling complicated stories, for displaying situations that perhaps not everybody wants to talk about. These sort of thorny issues that nobody wants to touch with a 10-foot pole. And the only closest film that I could say that kind of reached this for me was Parallel Mothers, which was also kind of a very thorny issue, wasn't it? Like, the idea that this whole thing that happened with the two mothers, and then the tragedy associated with it, and perhaps the Lost Order is also a tragedy in a sense, on different levels. And we do get a sense of that, and what happens afterwards. You still keep living, you're still alive as a person. How do you deal with those outcomes in your life? So I think that Gyllenhaal did a beautiful job of showing us that side of a person, and is clearly done from Olivia Colman's point of view. This is her telling her story, and trying to go day in, day out. And I think that the character who notices her on the beach is trying to figure her out, and she doesn't like that. She doesn't want someone to say, well, tell me about yourself. She doesn't want to divulge that information for a number of different reasons, despite her accomplishments outside of, let's say, motherhood or her failures. She perhaps is somewhat guarded in that case. And so it's very interesting to look at this. It's what I really consider a character study of a woman who has made some difficult decisions, and is kind of maybe just dealing with them right now at her in her life. She's just dealing with those feelings that have come from those decisions right now in her life, and it's so beautifully done. Congratulations to Maggie Gyllenhaal for directing as well as this fabulous screenplay. I think she should win it for this, but that's just my opinion. But I think she should win it for her adaptation of this, which I thought was just absolutely incredible. um, what is the next nominee for Best Adapted Screenplay?
So yeah, the next and also the last but not the least is The Power of the Dog, written by Jane Campion, and also directed the film based on the novel by Thomas Savage, which was published in 1967. So yeah, with The Power of the Dog, first of all, Jane Campion, she has won before, but it's for original screenplay for the piano, and now she's making her awards, major awards comeback here in Power of the Dog, which she both wrote and directed. Well, I'm not familiar with the novel, and I don't think a lot of people are familiar with the novel. It's not necessarily like an all-time classic or a bestseller that a lot of people have read. And like, even if you look at the Wikipedia page of the novel, it's a short page, which tells that it doesn't have necessarily the level of a lot of these all-time classic novels that we love and endured all over the years. And and I read like the backstories that Jane Campion was just reading it, and she said, and obviously she loved the novel after reading it, and she was like, I need, and the first thing that she did is to try to get the rights. I guess similar to Maggie Gyllenhaal situation, that she wants to get the rights, and she found out that nobody has the film rights yet, and she got the rights because she felt like it, because she felt like she wanted to do a movie of this, that it is perfect for her. And with the screenplay, there's a lot of it is a writing heavy film. We see this, and I guess it will be similar on how we discussed the film in past episode. But it started with this introduction with Phil Burbank, played by Benedict Cumberbatch. He is this cowboy who is this I guess masculine, like old school, I guess. Like, he's this classic traditional cowboy, and then he sees Cody Smith McPhee's character, his name again, Peter Gordon, and then he made fun of him. Like, the whole film is basically an exploration of toxic masculinity, and also sexual repression. It's also revenge. There's also revenge of it, particularly on the second half. And I thought, from a screenplay standpoint, it's a well written film for sure. There's a lot of these great conversation that gives us who these characters are, and I think, while I don't think the romantic storyline, like, I wish there was more regarding the romantic storyline between Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons, but I thought they had this one great moment, at the top of like a hill, and I forgot the lines. I didn't. Yeah, I don't have the lines here, but there was a great line there that Jesse Plemons said to Kirsten Dunst that I wish I had it on my notes. But yeah, I thought that was a great line, and and at the end, it fulfilled the journey of Peter Gordon, Cody Smith McPhee's character. I forgot the name again. It fulfilled this journey for him, and and while it because while I like, some of the reactions I read, like, they, like, a lot of them um felt like the ending was ambiguous. I thought it wasn't. I thought it was pretty clear that it was um, Peter Gordon who is the reason behind the death of Cumberbatch's character. So yeah, but yeah, at the from screenplay standpoint, it's a well written film, and it may not be my favorite here, but I can really acknowledge its strength here in screenplay, which is also Jane Campion's strength as well. As evidenced by the piano and winning an Oscar for writing it. So yeah, it's also another great nomination.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points there. For me, this story was told from the point of view of the Benedict Cumberbatch character. And, kind of like rolling in the beginning of the story as Benedict Cumberbatch is with his brother, he kind of has a lot of fears. And, while I think a lot of people have have pointed out certain themes in this story, for me, it really is just the fear of the main character, Benedict Cumberbatch. He doesn't know what to do with all these feelings that he has. And, for all practical purposes, he does kind of bully the kid a lot, but, and I have to be honest with you, that kid, he almost has no choice but to hang out with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
He's sort of thrown into this position of now his mother is kind of off doing her own thing with her new husband. And while I feel like they try to address this relationship that the mother has, or she already had that problem going into the marriage. It was something that, perhaps her husband didn't know about her. He married her, in good faith. And then to find out maybe she did have this problem after all with different things that were going on in her mind. But regardless of that portion of the story, I think that, the scene where we see Cumberbatch has his own like little trove or place where he can escape to, and he goes into that trove, and it's kind of metaphoric in a sense. It may not be an actual place, but let's just say this is where his stash is. This is where whatever his inner deep dark feelings are, and the fact that the young boy was able to penetrate that, I found one of the best parts of the script, and maybe could have been elaborated a little bit more. This boy was kind of fearing for his life. He didn't know what to expect or think. And, I think he was coming to the realization that the Benedict Cumberbatch character is not what he purports to be at all. And so, since he knew that about, that character, I think that he also did not like to see someone else who confirms his desires and emotions. And so that's, for me, is the motivation as to why, the Cumberbatch character became the focus of this sort of mysterious death, if you will, from anthrax, right? That's what he died from. This young man already knows that he's different from everyone else. And as a way to protect himself from the discovery of even more intimate details about himself, the mysterious death of the Benedict Cumberbatch character comes about. And I think he realized that as long as he was around, this very strong kind of, let's say, pushy character, that it meant that even more of his private, thoughts and feelings would be revealed. He would be the one who would be the focus of it, not Benedict Cumberbatch, who is also in the same category. So I think that that's a very interesting twist on it, that, now he finds himself with someone who knows everything. Like Benedict Cumberbatch, figured him out right away as soon as he saw him. But he didn't want anyone to keep focusing on that. So now that that character is gone, he can kind of go about his way and stay to himself, and no one's going to bother him. No one cares that he is that way. Benedict Cumberbatch might have been attracted to him. There's all sorts of things that are in this story, and I think that that's the core of the story. And I think that it's, while does kind of seem like a mystery, for me, it seemed very clear that that was the main point of this screenplay. And yes, there is some bullying going on, no more than we would see anywhere else, from any other group of people. So I don't think that he was sort of like a master bullier. I think he did that to keep people away from discovering the truth about his sexuality. And it worked. It had worked for a very long time, but it was not going to work with this kid. In fact, there were some moments where they got super close. And I'm like, it's obvious to me. I think they might have even had an intimate relationship. It's possible. This is something, kind of like a very interesting take on this, because sometimes people do have relationships with people who have bullied them. Like, we know this happens. We know that this occurs. And so, I thought it was kind of an interesting point of view to take at that particular moment in time, of a relationship that kind of ends in a bit of a tragedy. But for the character that, the young boy, I don't think he thinks it was tragic at all. I think that he was like, I don't have to deal with this anymore. He's more concerned about dealing with the relationship he has with Benedict Cumberbatch than necessarily Benedict Cumberbatch bullying him, because he realizes that, that whole interaction with him was just to kind of even be so Benedict Cumberbatch could be around him, could justify being around him. I can justify being around somebody that I'm attracted to by spending all this time and focusing on him as an individual. And I can justify it because look at him. He's so different from everyone else. So, before he couldn't justify being around a man like that. You couldn't justify having, physical contact or that type of proximity to another man. But now he can. He's showing the kid stuff to do. The kid is working for him. I'll take him under my wing. He's going to be around me. So, there are all these sort of shields that he had put on. And I think that screenplay definitely accomplished that. Now, the relationship between the mother and the husband, I don't know whether that could have really been developed anymore. I think that the mother had this problem coming into the story. And it was just kind of like, the risk you take when you marry someone that you don't know much about. Maybe he didn't really know her. And that did happen a lot. People got married to people and they didn't know anything about them. And then come to find out that they do have, some kind of problem or something. And you're there for life. Like, you're married to them. This is what you've done with your life. So he's going to stick with her and hopefully, she'll get the help she needs. She'll be able to recover. But even she's concerned about this relationship between Benedict Cumberbatch and her son. And I'm not going to say that her alcoholism was a result of that, but let's just say I'm sure that she's had her concerns about her son and she worries about him. And that might have added to things. Perhaps she never shared that with her fiance and then husband. Perhaps it's something that she couldn't share with him. She can't go ahead and say, I'm concerned about the relationship between your brother and my son. Like, she can't say that. You could clearly see she's concerned about it, but she can't verbally say it. And so it expresses itself in her troubles. But, I think for me, that's what this film really radiates to me or sends a message to me. And I think the screenplay does a very good job of that. But I am taking some liberties here. I'm taking some liberties. I admit that, but that's how I interpreted this film. And it is true. Yes, he could be considered to many, like a toxic person. I do get that, but I can't discount the fact that as far as I'm concerned, they had some sort of intimacy between the two of them. And that was something that both of them didn't want discovered by anybody, by any means necessary, if that were the case. In fact, I would have gone so far as to say that I wouldn't have been surprised if the Benedict Cumberbatch character might have even killed himself. Let's say if that were the story, if that's the way that Champion chose to write it, I wouldn't have been surprised if he tried to kill himself, because he was so guarded with those secrets in his personal life and feelings. And we have seen people do things like this. It doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is. It could be any relationship, but he needed to guard that. He needed to keep it a secret. And, it wasn't going to be kept a secret as long as this young kid was around, this young, somewhat pleasant kid. He's a sweet kid. He's like a really little sweetheart kid, young man, let's say. And so, that brought out a lot of feelings in the Benedict Cumberbatch character. So those might have been things that he didn't want to relive or revisit and, perhaps couldn't live with. So that's how I kind of interpreted Campion's twist on this. And I think it definitely came through in the story, and it was a very sensitive point of view to put forward in what must have been a very difficult situation to deal with at the time, when all eyes seemed to be on them, didn't it? Didn't it seem like everybody was watching their every move? Like all the ranch hands and everybody, like they had no place to hide anything. Like they were constantly under surveillance. Where is he? Where's my son? Like everybody was all in their business. They had no privacy. It wasn't sort of like a Brokeback Mountain where they were sort of off in the middle of nowhere and no one knew what they were doing. This is
Yeah.
right at the ranch where they live. Like everybody knew. So this was something else that I thought about, and kind of try to wrap my head around it. It was a good story, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed some of the other adaptations. For example, I thought Drive My Car, was a better adaptation in my opinion. Which of the five adapted screenplays do you think will win for best adapted screenplay?
Yeah. I wait. I think we should go with original first because we
Sure.
didn't. Yeah. For original, I think it all comes down to Belfast and Licorice Pizza in original screenplay race. I can see either of them winning them. I don't know who could win. I'm not sure right at the moment. We're recording this at near the end of February, a month away, still a month away before the Oscars. So I think original screenplay, I think it is between Belfast and Licorice Pizza. I'm giving the edge to Belfast because I think that is the most likely Best Picture winner among those two. And I think that is also the film where a lot of these Academy voters will be like, where they felt, where they had more attachment, I guess, to the story. Belfast. Although if I'm the Academy, I might vote for either actually, either Licorice Pizza or Worst Person in the World. Like if I am voting for that, with adapted, well, the front runner here right now is the Power of the Dog, but the Lost Daughter I could also win. I mean, it won best screenplay at the Venice Film Festival. So and also Drive My Car. I believe Drive My Car won the screenplay at the Cannes Film Fest
Yes, it did.
last year. Yeah, I believe it won there. So there's a lot of I think adapted is more competitive. Those are the three films that I think could win. Front runner is Power of the Dog since it is the front runner in picture. So I think it's a front runner. But yeah, I can see Lost Daughter winning this, or Drive My Car even winning this. I think this even a category that Drive My Car has the best chance outside the best international category. So yeah, I'm predicting right now Power of the Dog since it is a front runner, but I can see the Lost Daughter and Drive My Car also taking that trophy. But if I would vote, I would vote for Drive My Car. So yeah, that is my.
Well, for me, for best original screenplay, while it is true Belfast was outstanding, I really am hoping that either Don't Look Up or The Worst Person in the World gets it. For me, I feel that those two were just so stand out compared to the others. Um, and the other thing too is that The Worst Person in the World, as I had said, was a runner-up for, or one of the nominees at the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is essentially like the best film in the festival. I think that one might be one that's incredibly although both Don't Look Up and The Worst Person in the World are culturally significant, for me, The Worst Person in the World is the most culturally significant right now when it comes to, sort of intimate relationships. And for adapted screenplay, I have to go with Drive My Car. That's the one that really kind of touches you and, is a realistic way of how people deal with emotions and grief and loss and getting on with their life. I think that the other screenplays are great too, and maybe you're right about The Power of the Dog really being the front runner for it. But I think Drive My Car is the one that stands out the most in originality, even though it's adapted, let's say just the point of view, the interpretation of it. And I think that it really deserves the win. So we're certainly on agreement there. So, it's going to be exciting to see who wins this, isn't it, the Cinemike? And I just want to thank everybody who is watching this. Thank you for joining us today on PGS Reviews. And please check out all the PGS All-Stars and Reviews episodes to find out more about the creators in our community. The Cinemike, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at the Cinemike, and you can read my articles on epicstream.com.
Excellent. And for me, you can always find me on Positive Fandom, my YouTube channel, where I do reviews and look at trailers and do so much more on the channel. So please check me out on Positive Fandom on YouTube. You can also find me on Positive Fandom on Twitch, one word, Positive Fandom. On Monday nights, you can find me with Lorraine Creole on Toxic Femininity at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Wednesdays and Thursdays, sometimes you can find me on the 1/6 Scale Man Network, either on Say What or on the Uncivilized Scoundrel Show. On Friday afternoons, you can find me on Midnight's Edge at 12 p.m. Eastern with Tom, Andre, and Cameron Pasha. On Friday nights, you can find me on the Burnett Work, streaming with Robert Meyer Burnett. And on Sunday mornings, you can find me on Positive Fandom on my live show, this Sunday Brunch at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we do the parlay of all the fun things that have been coming out in the fandom. So please check that out. And I also want to remind everybody to please like the video and subscribe to the channel and set alerts so that you'll be notified every time the Burnett Network posts a new show or stream. And you can also keep the conversation going on Facebook and Discord, and keep up on any of the shows by checking out our webpage on the PGS website. And as always, everybody, as the show comes to a close, always remember to be kind. Take care.